Hello, welcome back to the James Rambling Reviews for yet another episode. In today's episode, I know I've not been doing so many reviews this week, but obviously, I've had stuff going on and not had the chance to do millions of videos, but today I'm going to bring you The Last of Us Season 2 because I decided to catch up on the show because, I reviewed the first season, so it's like, why not catch up on the second season and figure out how I naturally felt about the show. So I will give my thoughts on the show. There will be a couple of spoilers, so if you've not seen the series, I have to explain a few things because that's the best way I can describe how I felt about the show and what I would give out of 10 and stuff like that. So if you haven't seen the show, definitely click off the video. I watched it on Now TV and I'll link down below where I watched it. And I'll link down below my review of the first season of Last of Us. So there's all of that, and you also need to know that I still haven't really played the Last of Us games because they're just on the PlayStation. I don't really play a PlayStation console, so I've never really had a chance to really dive into the context of what these games are all about. But from the first season, I was really intrigued about the story. I liked out pretty much a lot about that show. I didn't think it was a masterpiece, but for what it was trying to do, for what it was trying to go for, it was an interesting enough story with cool acting and cool filmmaking and things like that. It was really good and surprised the hell out of me because I never played the game. So there is all of that. So if you want to know what this season of The Last of Us is it's pretty much like 5 years later after the first season, where we start to see Joel, we start to see Ellie again. But this time, they introduce a lot more characters in this season. You've got Abby, Dina, Jesse. You've got this character called Gale. There's a few more characters than you normally would expect. And there's only 7 episodes as well. So everything starts to take a change in the pacing and all of that. So what I'm going to say is that the first thing that came to mind when I watched the first episode is okay, it was slow, but I'm interested to see where this goes. And this is a spoiler, right? But when it gets to episode 2, it's for me, there was a lot of cool zombie moments and how they were trying to survive against these zombies. Abby and all of that was getting into it. But as soon as they kill off Joel in this season of the series, you kind of just leave a bit disappointed, in my opinion. Because ever since that episode 2 happened, I was struggling to figure out why I actually wanted to watch the show. And it was very, very apparent as I kept watching more and more episodes that they were struggling to find a really good through line, a really good reason to have the story continue. Because Ellie is trying to figure out herself again, rebuild her whole, mental experience with how she just lost a family member and things like that. But when she starts to dabble into the whole thing with Dina and Ellie, it's absolutely fine. It's just they don't really communicate to the audience enough about Abby and wanting to go after Abby. There kind of is just episodes in here where you've got Dina and Ellie just messing about and kissing each other and things like that. So you don't really get a lot of story. The dragging this out, there's a lot of episodes here where there's not a lot happening. There's the idea about the cult called the Wolves. There's the idea about the Fireflies. There is some zombies, but you don't really see a lot of zombies. It's really strange, as a season of television, because you want to get invested in these characters because it's meant to be dramatic and emotional and things are happening. But as every episode keeps going on and on, not enough is necessarily happening. However, I will say there are moments of episode 6 that I really do enjoy, because you get to see the moments where Joel and Ellie were still with each other. It's a flashback episode, so you get to feel the idea that, well, okay, obviously you get to see Joel and Ellie again, and you get to see Joel sing happy birthday to Ellie, and all of that is really, really good. It's just the storyline itself, they don't really do enough to go after Abby. They kind of just let it all wash away in the background. It's yeah, Abby's out there, we are taking so long to do this. And what's really annoying is that when you get to the final episode of the season, you've got Ellie going on this boat, she's driving over there, she sees Abby, and then what actually happens is, Abby shoots Jesse in the head, and then you see this whole thing where this was going to happen, and then Ellie's got her arms like this, whatever, and then Abby shoots the screen and it fades to black. So they kind of rush right to the Abby situation, but they never really dabble too deeply into why Abby wanted to kill Joel. She's in probably 3 or 4 scenes in the entire season. I think that's the problem with the season as a whole, is that they didn't really have a lot to work with. They didn't really flesh out the story properly. As from what I heard, is that Last of Us Season 2, or Last of Us Part 2, right, the original video game, is split into like a few parts where there's a section where you play as Ellie, and then there's a section where you play as Abby, so maybe Season 3 is when they start to introduce Abby. So overall for me, I was really conflicted on the season as a whole, because there was a few moments in certain episodes I enjoyed, but for the overwhelming majority, because we took away a certain character, it did minus the tension and the actual idea where you're gonna get obsessed with this series and all of that. So it's definitely a really, really big downgrade from the original season of Last of Us. They didn't really understand their audience properly, because they knew that Joel passed away and all of that, but they never really found that, or the core audience, that the casual viewers that never played the game, because you're gonna make a casual person confused if you don't have enough characters to work with here. So honestly, I'd probably give this a 5 out of 10. It's not the worst thing ever, but for a show, a season of a TV series that had a very, very good first season, it is a pretty big letdown. A lot of mediocre just messing about and just not enough necessarily happening. So there is all of that. That's my review of Last of Us Season 2. I know I'm like 2 or 3 weeks late to the party, but I was watching other things and gave myself time to find the time to watch it all. So there is all of that. Hope you enjoyed this review, and stay tuned for more reviews like this one. And that's been my review of Last of Us Season 2. See you for another review on the James Allen Reviews. Bye.